New videos every day.
And what would a eugenics society really look like? To answer this question, we're going to cut straight to the source, to Francis Galton, the father of eugenics. And we're going to find out what he thought a utopian eugenics society would look like. In the last years of Francis Galton's life, he wrote a book called Kantsaywhere. And this book described a society built to breed fitter and smarter people. So this book was never published, but he passed it down to his niece, and she found most of it very offensive and burned most of it. There were parts of the book that survived, and what I'm going to do today is read some of the excerpts of the surviving parts of this book. Most people point out that Francis Galton emphasized positive eugenics, prearranged marriages of the fit and selective breeding of the fit, as opposed to negative eugenics, which would include sterilization and segregation of the unfit. Now, this book clearly shows that he is a supporter of negative eugenics. So again, I'm going to be reading you some passages, and I want you to realize that this comes straight from Francis Galton. These are his words. It comes from his book. So this book starts out with a man named Neverwas, and he dies, and he gives his property to the Eugenics Society. And I'm going to read you this. Mr. Neverwas had died, leaving all his property in the hands of trustees for the use of the Council of Kantsaywhere and their successors. He desired in his testament that the income should be employed in improving the stock of the place, especially of its human breed. He laid down the principle with much emphasis that none of the income of his property was to be spent on the support of the naturally feeble. So the first comment I want to make on this is this man, he's only donating his money to improving the stock of human beings, just like a farmer would improve the stock of his pigs by selective breeding. This man wants to selective breed human beings. The second thing is this man is only donating his money to the fit. He's not donating his money to people that need it, the poor, the disabled, and the needy. So the Eugenics Society in this book is called a college. Let me read you this. The trustees of the college are the sole proprietors of almost all the territory of Kantsaywhere, and they exercise a corresponding influence over the whole population. So in other words, a small group owns everything. And because they own everything, they control society. Now, doesn't that sound like an elite group controlling a slave society? So here's another passage. It is the way of Kantsaywhere, for everybody is classed by everybody else according to their estimate or knowledge of his person and facilities. So in other words, we have a caste society where people are divided into different classes, and some classes of people are more important than other classes of people. And this is all decided on whether you are fit or unfit genetically. So how do they decide who goes in what class? Let me read you this. I learned that I was only just in time to undergo the first of my 2 examinations. It was merely a pass one, but a necessary preliminary for admission to the honors examination, in which the more successful candidates are classed in order of merit. The honors examination of girls for the year was just over, and the lists were to be published that very night. So in other words, we have 2 examinations. The first examination is a pass or fail. If you fail, you're unfit. The second examination is an honors examination, and you get a score. The score determines how fit you really are. And the score is publicized for everyone to see. So what are these tests that decide what class you go into? What are they like? I'm going to read you this. I went through physical tests, which I need not describe particularly, as they were similar to those which all Englishmen undergo before admission into the Army, Navy, etc. But the examination was more strict and minute in the medical part. He took me around the enclosure, testing me in turn by every instrument and recording results. They referred to stature, both standing and sitting, span of arms, weight, breathing capacity, strength of arms, power of grip, swiftness of blow, reaction time, discrimination, blindfold between weights, normality of eyes, acute of vision, color sense, acuteness of hearing, discrimination of notes, sensitivity of taste and touch, and a few other faculties. Lastly, the state of my teeth, which were particularly good, and of my mouth were inspected. So this is a super physical test, deciding whether or not you can have children. Now, based on all of these tests, do you think you would pass? Okay, so what about the people who didn't pass? Well, this is what Mr. Galton says about that. As to the fate of those who failed to pass, a bureau was charged with looking after the unclassed parents and their offspring, and much was done to make the lot of the unclassed as pleasant as might be, so long as they didn't propagate any children. If they did so, kindness was changed into sharp severity. So in other words, there is a bureau that's in charge of all of the unfit people. It's basically a police force. And the unfit people are not allowed to have children. So if you don't have children, they're nice to you. But if you do have children, their kindness turns into a sharp severity. So the state, they're trying to get the unfit to not have children. Now I'm going to read you this. The propagation of children by the unfit is looked upon by the inhabitants of Kantsaywhere as a crime to the state. In other words, if the unfit have children, it's treason. It's a crime against the state. So you have different grades of fit according to their scores. Now you also have different grades of the unfit according to their scores. Now, I'm going to read you this. There are many grades of expected unfitness, ranging from that of the offspring of the idiots, the insane, and the feeble-minded, at the lower end of the scale of civic worth, to whom the propagation of offspring is forbidden, whether it be by forcible segregation or other strong measures, up to the moderate unfitness expected in the offspring of parents who rank only a little below the average in eugenic worth. The method of penalizing taken in order of their severity are social rejection, excommunication, deportation, and lifelong segregation. So not only are there grades of fit people, but there are also grades of unfit people. Now, what do they do with the really unfit people? Well, I'm going to read you this. Labor colonies are established where the very inferior are segregated under conditions that are not onerous, except that they must work hard and live in celibacy. It is difficult to describe the indignation and even horror felt in Kantsaywhere at acts that may spoil the goodness of their stock. If you're unfit, you're put into a work camp. Now, in history, these work camps have been called other things like gulags and concentration camps. So another thing that's talked about in this book is the fact that they want to force the unfit out of the country. And I'm going to read you this. An important committee of this council is charged with the care of those who fail to pass the pole examination in eugenics. Such persons are undesirable as individuals and dangerous to the community, owing to the practical certainty that they will propagate their kind if unchecked. They are subjected to surveillance and annoyance if they refuse to immigrate. So, if you don't pass this examination, you are considered undesirable as individuals and dangerous to the community. And because you might have children, unless you're stopped, you are watched and surveyed by this council and harassed until you leave the country. So what about the mentally ill? Well, I'll read you this. As regards the insane and mentally defective, suitable places for their life segregation are maintained in Kantsaywhere. So in other words, if you're mentally ill, you're segregated in an institution and you live there for the rest of your life, which means you die there. So he also talks about limiting the size of family and population, just like they do in China today. I'm going to read you this. There is no reason why a sentence demanding it for the protection of the nation should not be passed, and the infraction of that sentence punished as a criminal act. So there is a limited amount of children you can have. And if you have more children than you're allowed, it's a crime. And there is a penalty and a fine that you pay. I'm going to read you what he says about that. As regards fines, if the defaulter cannot pay them, he is treated with severity as a bankrupt debtor is to the state, being placed in a labor colony with hard work and hard fare until it is considered that he has purged his debt. So there's one other point I'm going to go over. I'm not going to read this whole entire section. I'm going to summarize it. Basically, there's a psychiatrist and there's a doctor at the border. And if you want to immigrate into this country, you're given a full eugenics examination. And this is what happens if you don't pass. Immigrant parents, both of whom have received positive marks on the pole examination, may keep their children with them, but otherwise not. So basically, if you pass this examination, you can keep your children, but if you don't pass, your children stay. You may not keep your children. So there it is, from the father of eugenics. Now, I have a question for you. Would you like to live in a society like this? Let me know what you think. Post a comment and let me know. In a future video, I'm going to be talking about the KGB and its plan to demoralize the American culture and destroy religion. And I'm also going to be doing a video about Margaret Sanger and what eugenics has to do with Planned Parenthood. So thank you for watching. Now, I want to thank the people that have been commenting. I've really actually liked reading the comments, especially because it's so controversial. It's very interesting to me to see what you guys think. Please subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and please take the time to rate my video. And I'll see you next time.
For more great videos like this one, check out the Psychetruth channel on YouTube.